Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So today, we're doing the conclusion of the Remembrance of Earth's Past series, Death's End. And the reason this book is called Death's End is because in the distant future, modern medicine and the ability to cryogenically freeze yourself has made it so people can live hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, this is a book by Cixin Liu. This is translated by Ken Liu, who translated The Three Body Problem, the first book in the series. Now, some things to say about this. First off, I liked The Three Body Problem all right, and I loved the second book, The Dark Forest. I love it so much. It's so good. I hate Death's End. I hated it. I didn't like it at all. And here's the reason. Is because, here's the thing. One of the things that started me thinking about science fiction has an inherent problem with misogyny, right? Like, it does. It does. As a genre, it has a problem with women characters being portrayed in a way that kind of trivializes them. Or one of the things that got me thinking about that was The Three Body Problem, because it has been held up as an example of a strong and fair female character fronting a book. And this book does the exact opposite of that. Like, the exact opposite. And I think that the kind of trivialization of women in science fiction is the truly great authors. First off, I think it's not so much a problem in the genre currently. Like, there are a lot of very strong female authors, like Connie Willis and Anne Leckie and N.K. Jemisin, who are writing really, really great stuff. The Broken Earth trilogy has just an amazing female lead, just amazing. I think The Three Body Problem does have a very realistic, strong female character. But I think the lesson of Death's End comes across as kind of like, at the end you just go like, well, that's why men should rule the world instead of women. That was the thing I got from, and I just thought oh, that's crap. That's garbage. And yeah, it's there are some issues in here about the fundamental question in this book for me is, first off, this book does not focus on a fundamental physical or scientific problem the way it kind of does, but the problem it focuses on is how do you rectify string theory needing 13 dimensions versus the 3 that we experience. And the answer in this book, by the way, and there's spoilers for the other books in here, and I don't even care about spoiling this book at all. The answer is that advanced civilizations in the universe are using dimensional collapse as a form of warfare. So that originally the universe had 13 dimensions, but dimensional warfare has reduced it in a lot of places to 3. Because if you can translate yourself from 13 dimensions to 12 and then destroy the 13th dimension, you destroy all of your competitors. And so that has happened so many times now that in the 3rd dimension there are advanced civilizations transmuting solar systems to 2, so that they're flat because they live in 2 dimensions. It's and you just go that's a weird thing, and it's a really super far out science fiction concept, right? And should be super interesting, but that's not what's interesting about this. The question that this book seems most concerned with is, are the violent war-making tendencies of humanity A, a bad thing, or B, unique? Like, we think of them inherently as bad things, but it seems like the author is arguing that in a universe where dimensional warfare is a thing, that, like, there are best instincts, there are best hope. Like, our best hope is to come out with guns blazing, right? And, okay. I mean, it seems very counterintuitive to the idea of, you know, the kind of motifs in the first and second book. And you can argue, and I'm sure some people will, that what the author has done here is kind of held a mirror up and just gone like, well, this is what we do. As we do cultural revolutions, and then we do, and this is the big spoiler for the second book in the series, we do mutual destructive, like, deterrence. Like, and then we do cataclysmic genocidal warfare. That's what we do. That's what everybody does. That's kind of, and, like, here's the thing, is that you can argue that that is true. Can. But I would argue it's depressing. It's horrifically depressing. And it is. It is. It's depressing. It's depressing if that's the thing you want to, and, like, you can say that, like, well, that's just reality. That, like, science fiction shouldn't be all hope and victory and things like that. That it should be a dark and devastating, dystopic kind of thing. And, like, yeah, you can argue, but, like, I don't know, that's not what I thought was coming, right? Like, that's not what I thought was coming. And so this book is really it's sad. It's a sad book. It's a very, very sad book. Because entire alien civilizations are going to die in the course of this book. Right? Like, you're going to realize that the universe was once a magical and wonderful, you know, place that we're not, and that, like, what we essentially exist in is the remnants of a battlefield. Like, a super, like, civilization, like, versus, like, a universe-wide battlefield that has devastated us down to three observable dimensions. Like, that's, here, crazy thing though, at one point, part of this book actually takes place with people, traveling into a fourth dimensional reality, and, like, that's pretty cool. Like, that is pretty cool. So the author of this book, I mean, clearly has the chops to do whatever they want, and what they decided to do was kind of just, like, sound the death bell on the universe and just go like, oh, by the way, you realize this is the end, right? Like, that's it. It's just that. It's just done. It's done. And, that's horrible, you know, to just, like, kind of give that. Like, to give that. And don't get me wrong, is that, like, right, part of being a creature that understands that inevitably we end, right? Like, we understand our own mortality. We're one of the few animals capable of that. And I say that because, you know, there's no been question about whether or not, like, but certainly it's seemingly, at least, I think elephants also understand it. But at least on some level. Now, that being said, so this is a sad book. It's a very sad book, and I didn't like it. I don't like being reminded that it inherently, my life and the entire existence of the universe is a finite and futile thing. I like the idea that maybe humanity could escape this universe or make its own, or somehow. And, like, I get that those are fanciful ideas and that I will probably never see them. Like, the odds are, you know, astronomical that such a thing is possible. Like, I get that. It's the extension of the Fermi paradox, right? Is that in the future the Fermi paradox says that there probably is a filter, right? That there probably is, that, like, you know, people don't survive the... Although Asimov wrote an article about people living up to the, like, the heat death of the universe. Like, wrote a story or a novel, and it was great. It was fun. It was very fun. The idea that people have to, you know, like, huddle around dying stars for warmth and energy and things like that. But so I mean that's where this went. And is it far-reaching? Yes. Is it experimental? Yes. Is it well written? It is. It is. It is. It's the saddest thing ever. So is it a good book? Yeah. I mean, should you finish the trilogy? Probably. Will you like it? No, you can't like it. You can't like it. It's so depressing. It's so depressing. So let's read the back of Death's End, and then we'll finish off this trilogy. We'll go on to the last Hugo Award winner on the list. The epic trilogy that began with the three-body problem concludes with the New York Times best-selling Death's End. Half a century after the Doomsday Battle, the uneasy balance of dark forest deterrence keeps the Trisolarian invaders at bay. Earth enjoys unprecedented prosperity. With human science advancing daily and the Trisolarians adopting Earth culture, it seems that the two civilizations are learning to coexist peacefully as equals without the terrible threat of mutually assured annihilation. But the truth has also made humanity complacent. Cheng Xin, an aerospace engineer from the early 21st century, awakens from hibernation in this new age. She brings with her knowledge of a long-forgotten program dating from the beginning of the Trisolar Crisis, and her very presence may upset the delicate balance between two worlds. Will humanity reach for the stars, or die in its cradle? Well, if we know about the inevitable death of the universe, it doesn't matter which they do, does it? Yeah, that's what that book. That's the tone that this book has all the way through it. Just warning you. I'm actually kind of having fun with the review now, and realizing that I shouldn't mind it as much as I do, because it's a good book. It's a good book. I just didn't like it. Is it a fitting end to the? It's an end to the trilogy, right? Read the second book though. The second book is so good. Cheng Xin gazed up at her star from the top of a giant tree. It was why she'd been awakened. During the brief life of the Stars Are Destination project, a total of 15 individuals were granted ownership of 17 stars. Other than Shenzhen, the other 14 owners were lost to history, and no legal heirs could be located. The Great Ravine acted like a giant sieve, and too many did not make it through. Now Cheng Xin was the only one who held legal title to a star. Though humanity still hadn't begun to reach for any star beyond the solar system, the rapid pace of technological progress meant that stars within 300 light-years of the Earth were no longer of mere symbolic value. DX3906, Cheng Xin's star, turned out to have planets after all. Of the two planets discovered so far, one seemed very similar to Earth based on its mass, orbit, and a spectrum analysis of its atmosphere. As a result, its value rose to stratospheric heights. To everyone's surprise, they discovered that this star already had an owner. The UN and the Solar System fleet wanted to reclaim DX3906, but this couldn't be done legally unless the owner agreed to transfer the title. Thus, Cheng Xin was awakened from her slumber after 264 years of hibernation. The first thing she found out after emerging from hibernation was this: as she had expected, there was no news whatsoever about the staircase program. The Trisolarians had not intercepted the probe, and they had no idea of its whereabouts. The staircase program had been forgotten by history, and Tianming's brain was lost in the vastness of space. But this man who had merged into nothingness, had left a real solid world for his beloved, a world composed of a star and 2 planets. So, yes, this woman wakes up and finds out she owns a solar system. It's a solar system people are interested in. And so suddenly, she's the richest person who has ever lived. And the reason she owns this solar system is because it was given to her by her friend who had a terminal disease and whose brain was shot into space in a probe. That probe is lost to history. She owns the solar system. It's a very interesting. I'm not saying this is not an interesting and engaging book. I'm not. What I'm saying is that when you embrace as a central theme that the universe makes all endeavor inherently futile, at some point we all succumb to the heat death of the universe, then That's it. That's all I got, really. It's, it's. But I will say this. I will say this. That's not inherently the problem for me, right? It's a funny problem to have for a book. I've never had a book make me feel so absolutely small and insignificant as this book does, but that's fine. That's within the range of human emotion. If that's what the author was going for, that's fine. What I didn't like was the characterization of the central problem. You come away from this book like thinking that if women had been denied their place in the power structure of the world, that things would have been better. And is it okay for an author to espouse that message? Well, I would argue that of course it's okay. I would argue that it's okay that it's part of my culture and my belief system's fundamental beliefs that it is within somebody's rights to express any belief. No matter how much I don't like it. Is it a responsible kind of worldly kind of thing to... No, it's a ridiculous belief. It's a ridiculous belief that somehow, if what you believe is that somehow a lack of diversity is a strength, well then you just don't understand how, the power of ideas. Right? Because different cultures and different, they don't inherently make each other weaker. They make each other richer. Like that's just the way things are. That's why we have the word croissant. Like it's also why all of Texas eats Tex-Mex all the time. They do, by the way, they do. If you're from Texas and you want to dispute that, go ahead. But I've been there. I've spent a bunch of time there, and don't get me wrong, it's good. And that's the thing is that so if your argument is that what we need to be exclusive rather than inclusive, you are allowed to espouse that argument, but I'm allowed to tell you that it's intellectually ridiculous. And you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. So that was my real issue here, is that I came away going well, you've written an engaging, albeit depressing novel, but your central thesis is inherently incorrect and flawed, and I don't appreciate having to. I don't mind examining opposing viewpoints, right? I'm not a person who doesn't believe that they should examine, you should know the things you don't agree with. But I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that. I just don't agree that women are inherently weak and emotional. And if you don't come away with that from this novel, I don't know what novel you were reading. And for me, that's a huge problem. It's inherently misogynistic. And that kind of spoils stuff if what you're trying to do is make a statement about an entire class of people. I don't care how good your science fiction book is, if your overriding theme is that black people are animals and can never grasp any kind of higher science or technology, I'm probably not going to love that. Right? That's a thing that I find inherently ridiculous. And it saddens me that some people would believe that. And that's kind of where I get with this book, is I just go oh man, that's a harsh message to have about 51% of the population of the planet. And maybe his argument is that Chinese women are like that. I'm still not on board. And so for me, that's a huge problem, right? It's as ruinous to me as something like having a female character who's two-dimensional and is just there for sexual violence. I don't love that either. It's another thing that really ruins books for me. And so for me, that's the kind of thing where I come away and just go man, you were so good. It was so good. Your characters were so great. And then you just get to it's almost like you just take back and just go like, women are great at suffering, but not anything else. Like, you give them what they want, they suddenly turn into flakes. And I didn't, no, nope, I'm not cool with that. So that was my issue with this. So that's the Remembrance of Earth's Past series, the first book which won a Hugo Award winner. And when we come back, we have one book left, and that is To Your Scattered Bodies Go by Philip Jose Farmer. So I will see you for that. Bye, everybody.